Good afternoon. I'm Barb Quaintance with AARP, and it's a pleasure to be with you this afternoon. Thank you to Ideagen for having this conversation. And I'm very excited to be here with my friend and colleague, Susan Cotton from the Lily Project. Let me just take 2 minutes to tell you how Susan and I know each other. I run a program at AARP called the Purpose Prize, which is the only national award that recognizes 50 plus social entrepreneurs, people who founded nonprofits, who saw a problem and just went after it. They used their lived experience and their skills to really make a difference, sometimes in their community, sometimes across the world, as in Susan's case. Susan was a Purpose Prize winner in 2018, and I've been an avid fan of her work ever since. So let's get into it. Let's talk about the Lily Project. So Susan, welcome. So nice to see you.
Thank you, Barb, and thank you, Ideagen, for including us.
Absolutely. So first of all, first things first, the Lily Project, the program, the project, the organization you founded. Tell us about it.
Yes. We are a women's health social enterprise. We're based in Nicaragua, and our mission is to ensure that all women and girls are able to have the knowledge and the care they need to be able to own their bodies, their health, and their future. We started in 2016, and it's a nice origin story, I think, where, as Barb mentioned, I started this enterprise after my 50s. I had been a corporate manager of marketing for 25 years in both financial services and healthcare. And at a point when my kids were heading off to college, I just decided, now is the time for me to start to explore and use the talents and skills I've built over these years and apply them to an area that I really care about and have deep passion around. And that, for me, is around women's equality and the ability for girls and women to really be able to understand who they are, what their bodies are, and be able to have full autonomy in the decisions around their own healthcare. So I went back and got a degree in a master's in social entrepreneurship from a program at Pepperdine University. And as part of that program, they encouraged us to go and visit a culture or learn about a culture and experience a cultural problem from the culture's point of view versus the usual way of entry from a U.S. perspective, which is understanding it from our perspective, right? So I had the great opportunity to go to Nicaragua, which I had to, I'm embarrassed to say, look at a map to figure out where Nicaragua was. And I was introduced to a young woman who was passionately involved in trying to eradicate cervical cancer in her country. And I was blown away by the fact that cervical cancer remains the #1 cancer killer in not just Nicaragua, but most of Latin America, because they lack access to the basic healthcare they need to be able to detect the early cancers. So Anielka Medina, who I have been partnered with since 2016, and I started to frame up what might be a potential solution that would allow us to address cervical cancer, the high rates of cervical cancer in her country and throughout Latin America.
That's quite a partnership that developed, right? That's very exciting. Yeah. And Ani still is with you, obviously, at the Lily Project, yes?
Yes. She was a young woman in her 20s, and her mother had passed away from cervical cancer, and her mother's name was Lily. So we chose to really acknowledge her and start this effort. But what we did is, which I think is really critically important, is we really looked at it. It's a grassroots issue because the solutions that we can bring from the U.S. perspective are very different from what is needed in those communities. And so we started to, Ani with her obviously deep cultural understanding, and me with my ability to bring some resources and financial support as well as some technical support into the country, we're able to kind of find a way to leverage what I can help with, but really bring about change and develop a organization that can address the issue from the Nicaraguan point of view. So in this case, what it meant is develop mobile health clinics where we would operate in very rural, remote communities where women had no access at all to really medical care. So we were able to develop mobile health clinics, which are basically a couple little trucks that would go out to very rural communities and set up 2-day clinics where we would invite girls and women to come in, and we would first do a very robust educational session to help people understand and women understand not only what we were doing from a prevention standpoint, but really what cervical cancer is and what the causes of that is and what are ways to prevent and keep your body healthy. Mm-hmm. We would do a very deep educational session, and then with that we'd have one-on-one counseling and then provide the cancer screening. So we developed what we called the Lily Health events that would travel out to rural communities, and within a 8-hour day, we'd be able to serve anywhere up to 300 girls and women within these sessions.
It's remarkable. I know you care very much, not just about the work and the cause, but also how you do your work. Can you just name for us what you might consider the key principles in how the Lily Project works?
Yes, we call them our pillars. So our first pillar is really that it's a grassroots driven organization. So in other words, the people closest to the problem have the best ideas on how to solve the problem. And so we really have developed our design around the grassroots understanding, meaning that we are staffed with local nurses, staffed with people that are more connected directly into the issue and into the community itself. So it's a very community-driven, grassroots approach. The second principle is data-driven. One of the beautiful, which is kind of a strange thing to say, but one of the beautiful parts about something like this is it's very easy to measure and to understand the issue. Everything we did was we started from a point of being able to collect data and understand our impact within the at the individual and at the collective level. And we're proud to say that we were probably the first organization that developed a really significant database that was able to be used to understand the actual extent of cervical cancer issues within remote and rural communities in Nicaragua. And it also allowed us to understand the sexual health needs of women in these communities, because what we learned is that 50% of the women we were serving had her first child before the age of 17. And we also were able to then also understand the level of understanding they had about their bodies. We learned that the majority, not just 50%, something like 80% of the women did not understand the relationship between their menstrual cycles and their fertility. So there's a lack of understanding and knowledge about how their body, who their body is, what their body is, and then their ability to keep themselves healthy and make decisions such as, do I want to have another child? Do I want to have a child at 17? So all of that came together, I believe, because we really approached it from both let's get into the culture, but let's really do it from a data perspective. The third principle, which is something we always work through, is collaboration. This isn't anything that any one organization can solve on its own. It's building relationships with global organizations who have deep capabilities. It's building relationships with the local community NGO market, with educational organizations, and allowing us all to find a way to work together across the whole thing. And then, which we'll probably talk about a little bit, is we developed a sense of creative resilience. Working in communities like this, Nicaragua, during pandemic and during the disruptions around the civil unrest in Nicaragua, we just learned that what our plan was, which it was a beautiful plan, still is a beautiful plan, but you have to learn how to adapt and change to the environment. But you want to do it in a way that you stay focused on your mission, but you have resilience in your organization to be able to understand that change is going to be just happening all the time.
So let's go there. The world doesn't stand still. And in the 8 years that you've been in Nicaragua, there's been a lot of changes in the government, in the country. Can you tell us just a little bit about what that looked like and what that meant for the Lily Project?
Yes. So I imagine everybody talks about it, but Nicaragua, we had a little bit, even additional issues that we had to address starting in 2018, actually, because there was this uprising against the Sandinista government at that moment because of some changes they were making. And with that uprising, the Sandinista government decided to really crack down on any kind of dissension within the country. And we've seen it all over the world. We're seeing it all over Latin America right now in terms of how the politics and the governments are working. So we started to look in 2018 and understand there would be a sense of, how to operate differently or how to continue to operate successfully in the country. And we started to really address some of those issues. And then when the pandemic happened, it just kind of overwhelmed the whole thing. And here we are, an organization that, spends every day out in the field, taking care of women, direct services. That model, obviously, we had to pause once the pandemic happened. And that was, early 2020. And although you would never hear it based on what the formal reports are, but we lost our chief medical officer early in the pandemic to COVID. Every single person on my team knew somebody within their family or a close friend that lost their lives to the disease. So it was a very traumatic time for the world, certainly, and certainly we were affected that way. Coming out of the pandemic, the government continued to crack down. Ortega was up for an election, and he jailed his political adversaries and started to force out and force NGOs, which we are designated as an NGO, to close. All the organizations that have been providing, care to the most marginalized people in his country were forced to shut their doors. We managed to keep it going. And then what we decided to do during the height of the pandemic is we recognized early that we had something that other people didn't have, and that was a connection to our clients because we've been leveraging WhatsApp as a communication tool, and WhatsApp being the primary way people communicate in these countries. We were able to quickly start to leverage WhatsApp as a tool for us to reach out and find out what we could be doing that could be helpful in the communities we serve. So what we learned is there was very little understanding of COVID, and we started to, we worked with a partnership with an organization out of Ann Arbor at University of Michigan, who provided us with scripting and other kinds of information that we could do to better share into these communities that weren't getting information on how you prevent, what are the signs of COVID, all of those things. So we started to be very proactive in using and leveraging WhatsApp and our ability to reach our clients. And then what we began to see is that they appreciated that, but they also wanted us to continue to be Lily for them. So they continued to use those channels now as more of a way for them to understand or be able to provide us with feedback about what's happening in their bodies, and we could consult with them more in a telehealth way. So we were early pioneers in WhatsApp with telehealth, and what we discovered, so the convergence of the two things where we are being forced to shut down our direct services because of the NGO, as well as with the COVID, we started to say, okay, there is an opportunity for us to stay true and focused on our mission, which is to enabled these women through their knowledge and care to take care of their bodies and their health. So how do we do it differently? So we piloted and started working with an organization that would allow us to develop a mobile health app to provide this kind of support, education, and knowledge to young women and girls in particular, to allow them to continue to learn and continue to be able to take ownership and have autonomy about their own decisions. And the app is called Chava, and it is in its development process, and we've done testing and we're getting some funding for that. So it's actually a really fulfilling new direction and potentially very high impact way we are pivoting in our mission.
So that is quite a pivot from being in the field to, developing and now relying, in, at least in part, right, on this app. What made that successful? That was a big pivot. What did you do that you felt made it work?
Yes. And I think, again, it goes back to the fact we're deeply concerned. The number one thing is we care about our problem. We fall in love with the problem, but we don't fall in love with the solution. So we know that women need our services. We know that there's 70% of girls lack education about their sexual health. We know that Latin America is projected to have the highest rates of adolescent pregnancy by 2030 of any region in the world. We certainly know about the issues surrounding cervical cancer, and they're not going away. So we are 100% committed and care deeply about the issues that we address. But we know we have to look for new ways to solve those problems. And that really helped us understand that the problem won't go away. It's not going to help us by saying that we're not going to focus on it any longer. It's really what we care about. So how are we going to do it? And the second thing that came about for us is we were super, super, super fortunate. We are, as a nonprofit and as a group that were predominantly driven by nurses and people who are in the medical field, to all of a sudden start saying, okay, we're going to be a player in digital health. I mean, that's a big adjustment. So we reached out to all sorts of different parts of our network, and we found that there's an organization out there who I will be happy to plug. It's called Tech to the Rescue. And they are an organization that links nonprofits with technology companies who have extra capacity at that moment to be able to provide services. So we were able to, through that organization, we were matched with an organization actually in Pakistan of developers who provided about a year of free service for us to get a app developed and built in an MVP, which is the minimum viable product, out into the market. So that, I think, was a key catalyst for all we've been able to accomplish. And then certainly the third thing about that is from an organizational standpoint, we really focus on the learning organization and how Anielka and I partnered together and really worked with our team to better, to really embrace the changes, and also there's so much work, learning you can do online now. And we really put together modules that will allow our team to be able to take their skills they've been building and apply them in a new way. So we have now an amazing team of nurses who have now become well-versed in social media, well-versed in digital health, well-versed in content development, and have actually new work skills that they can apply in other ways.
That's fantastic. That is such an amazing pivot. So not that you can predict the future, because as you know, things change. It's always a little uncertain, but where do you see the Lily Project going in the next 5 years?
Well, our goal is to have 2.5 million users by 2027, and that will be predominantly driven by young girls and women in Mexico, Central America, and then about a quarter of South America. We have a business plan. We are building relationships with potential foundations and corporate partners who will be partnering with us because they care about the same issues. They care about contraception. They care about women's health. And they think that our digital platform is a way for them to get the things they need to get into the market, more exposed. So we actually, we went from an organization who was really, 100% focused on rural Nicaragua to now looking at as our market is now throughout Latin America.
Great. We don't have a lot of time left, but I have to ask as my last question, tell us a story. Tell us about either a participant who the Lily Project really made a difference in their lives, or in this new model that you have, a story of success.
Yeah, I'd like to do actually two quick ones, because I think what we always said for us, success was really the people who've been able to be the most successful are the people that have been part of our team. And traditionally, young women, live at home. And as I mentioned, they have babies very early. And I'm very proud to say Sarahi, who was one of our first employees, she is now has her master's degree. She is living on her own. She owns a motorcycle. She's approaching 30 and not having a baby. And she says it's because that she had this ability to see her future differently because of her experience with Lily. So to me, that's, the profound thing that I want to see for everybody. And then for the women who we're now working with, there's a young woman and she's our first Chava ambassador. She's 17 years old. She wanted to be part of the development of our app, and she has been rallying young women to help do our research and do testing. And she is now in line to get a sort of a Google grant to start doing user interface testing. So she's now taken her little experience as a Chava ambassador, and it looks like it can leverage it into a job. So those are two of my things I love.
Those are pretty good examples.
Yeah. I thank you. I do too.
Yeah. Susan, you inspire me. That is just terrific. Thank you so much for your time and for telling us your story, and really for inspiring us. I love how you said, fall in love with the problem, but not the solution. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.